final athlete testimony of the evening comes from Queen City, Texas. A Husker, former Husker pitcher, getting ready for graduation, good looking dude, loves to hunt as well, also wearing boots. So please give it up for Caleb Hawkins.
Howdy, how y'all doing? You don't talk like that. I'm gonna start you all off with a question tonight, okay? And be open and willing to answer this honestly. It's not a hard question, I promise. How many of you have ever felt like you weren't good enough? Raise your hand. It can be in any area of your life, but it's something that I've been having to face recently. It's been very present, these feelings of inadequacy. As of about a month and a half ago, I was a baseball player for the University of Nebraska. Now I'm not. I was told that basically I wasn't good enough anymore. And that was really hard to deal with. It was tough, having that stripped from me. But I had to face that. And in those feelings of inadequacy, Satan really started getting to me. He started attacking me in areas of sin that I was struggling with. Not necessarily making me wanting to do those things more, but yet it was more of a self-awareness that he was rubbing in my face of, wow, you struggle with pride. You struggle with vanity. You struggle with lust. You struggle with worry. You're just not a good person. You're not good enough. You're not good enough to be one of God's chosen ones, I guess. And so this led me in one of my quiet times, just this past week. It led me to open up my Bible, and I turned to Ephesians 2. And in Ephesians 2, I read that I'm dead in my trespasses and my sins. And that at one point in my life, I lived in the desires of our flesh, that I did the will of the flesh and of the mind, and that I was a child of wrath by nature, that I deserved to be punished, essentially. So in that time of weakness, I read that the first 3 chapters there. I was like, man, like, this is bad. You know, I'm in a bad position. And again, that was Satan. And unfortunately, I knew better than to stop there. I know that the picture, it gets a lot better. In the next 3 chapters, I will read them, the next 3 verses, I'll read them word for word because you do not need to miss this. But God, being rich in mercy, because of his great love with which he loved us, and we being dead in trespasses, with us being sinners, with us in our own human nature not being good enough, he made us alive together with Christ. By grace you are saved. And raised us together and seated us together in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. And that's Ephesians 2, 4 through 6. So as I read that, I opened up my journal. You girls may call it a diary. For guys, it's a journal. I have it with me, and I would advise every young man in the room at some point, get to where you have a journal. I have very private thoughts in here that my parents don't know, my best friends don't know, things that essentially I can write a letter to God. And also it keeps you a little bit more accountable in your time with them because, trust me, I know how it is. A teacher tells you to go home and to read a chapter for class the next day. You're not going to do it. I mean, let's get real. You know, you don't want to go home and you don't want to read. But if that teacher tells you, I want you to go home, read a chapter, and bring me a written summary of it the next day, to give you an assignment, to hold you accountable for that reading, you're definitely going to want to do that. And so this is essentially, that's what my journal is for me. It's a place just to take notes, to come to God and stuff and record my thoughts, things that he reveals to me when I read his word. And what Ephesians led me to, it led me to write down a prayer. I'll read it word for word and I'll explain a little bit afterwards. Why do I look to the wrong things for fulfillment? I know it is in our flesh to do so, but yet your spirit is in me. The battle has been won, so why am I still struggling in areas where you alone can satisfy me? I look to others for happiness, whether it's through opinions on my appearance, which only leads to vanity, or if it's through people's opinions on my wisdom, intellect, or through the way that women view me. But when I step back and I look at myself, where I should only see your grace and love, I only see my shortcomings and immediately feel the urgency of fixing them. Yet, the way I attempt to fix them, they're simply a temporary patch. A permanent solution has already been given to me, an eternal fix. However, unlike the way that we fix things, where the old is still there and has just been patched or fortified, and therefore will still need maintenance and upkeep for that fix to be effective, your eternal solution, it took the old away completely. It is gone, never to be seen by you again. And in its place is the beautiful truth that we are saved. The gruesome crucifixion of your Son, who then majestically rose from the dead 3 days later, infinitely triumphs over any solution that I, my flesh, can ever imagine apart from you. God, you are good. Now, I tell you all that, I feel like that God has blessed me with some intelligence to make decent grades in school. But in my roots, I am from the piney woods of East Texas, right by Arkansas and Louisiana. And I'll be honest with you, when it comes to books, I like the ones with pictures, okay? So I'm going to try to explain things a little bit better to you in the form of a picture. And Coach Brown this morning, we had some time to hear from him. And he talked about how Jesus in his teachings used parables. He used stories to paint a picture for the disciples and people that are listening to him. So I'm going to paint a picture for you right now. I want you to imagine that you don't know Jesus. For some of you, that may be true tonight. You may not know Jesus. For those of you that are believers, just for a second, imagine that you don't know him. Imagine that your life essentially is the ocean. That at times it can be smooth as glass. It's perfect. Sunny skies, beautiful day. And at times it can be stormy. The waves are thrashing all about. I want you to imagine that you're in a boat in this ocean. And that boat, it's made up of things like, your personality traits, the friends that you have, the hobbies that you enjoy, the things that essentially keep you afloat in life. Keep in mind, for you believers, that in this, I want you to imagine you don't have Jesus to do that. Okay? So imagine back before you had Jesus, the things you relied on to keep you happy, to keep you from sinking. Inevitably, when you're in that position where you're in that boat, leaks are going to occur. It's going to happen. And so what are we going to try to do when there's a leak? You want to fix it right away. In your power of yourself, you want to fix that. So let's say that you throw a plug down in that hole. And you think, man, I'm good. I got all my buddies out there in their boats, and they didn't see that I almost sunk. They didn't see that I'm flawed, that I have imperfection. But surely, it'll always happen. A plug won't always hold. It's not a permanent fix. And so, some water starts to trickle up through that plug. You think, oh no, I have to fix this. It's happening again. I don't want people to see that I'm not perfect. I don't want people to see me sink. So you throw a patch on top of that plug and think, I'm good now. I'm good to go. But surely enough, just like the plug, that patch isn't permanent. We put it there, it's imperfect, just like we are. So we get really innovative. We think, you know what? I got hammer and nails here. And I have some boards, so I'm going to throw a board over that. And then you see, after doing that, there's a huge storm on the horizon, okay? You start getting worried, is that board going to hold up? Is it going to withstand the wind? Is it going to withstand all the water that's going to pour into this boat? And you look back at the shore, and you think, I am way too far to go back now. I've gotten so far out here that I'm going to sink. That's a pretty bleak picture to think about. It's very humbling. But now I want you to stop imagining that Jesus isn't there for you to help you, okay? So Jesus shows up. Does he bring you another plug? Does he bring you another patch? Does he bring you, hammer and nails and maybe some better wood to use for the board? It doesn't bring you any of that. Because I don't know if you realize this, and I hope that you do. I hope you've read this parable, but in Matthew 14, Jesus walks on water. He doesn't need a boat. He doesn't need any of that. He wants to be our permanent fix. And so you think, how do I do that? How do I use him as my permanent solution to my imperfection, to bridge the gap between me and God, between my imperfection and his majesty? You got to get out of the boat. You have to get out of that boat that you're using to keep you afloat in life. You're using all these other things to make you happy. Using all these other things to bring you fulfillment. And they're just temporary. They're not going to last. Jesus is out there. He's on the water. In Matthew 14, Peter actually says, God, if that is you, call out to me. Jesus, if that is you, call out to me. And Jesus replies with one word. He says, come. That's all he said. He says, come. And so Peter gets out of the boat and he does that. And I want you to know that he's reaching out to you right now. He's saying, come. Just get out of the boat. Stop trying to do it all by yourself because you're imperfect. You're not going to be able to. Let me do it for you. For you believers that have already stepped out of that boat, the battle's not over. Storms are going to come. Maybe that storm's still on the horizon, and it's going to happen. It's very easy for us when you get out of your boat over here, and you're walking towards Jesus, who's waiting there with open arms to meet you. You get out of the boat, and you're walking. You see the storm coming. You're getting really nervous about it. As soon as you take your eyes off the film, you think, maybe I should go back to my boat. Maybe I should go back to where, I thought I was safe before. You're going to start sinking immediately. It's going to happen. As a believer, it happens to me all the time. And I have to constantly remind myself that the only solution to that, the only way that I can stay afloat, is I reach up for Jesus. And when I do that, I figure out that his hand was there already. He was just waiting. He was just waiting. He's waiting for us to come. He's waiting for us to just drop the things that in our humanity we use to keep us afloat. So as Coach Brown comes and speaks to you this evening, just think about that. I know God will speak through him, and that we will all be blessed by it. And just ask yourself, am I still in the boat? Am I still relying on my own strength? Or have I stepped out? And if you've already stepped out, then I praise God for that, because I look forward to the day when we don't have to worry about sinking anymore, because we have stepped out of that boat, and one day I will be praising God with you in the kingdom of heaven. I look forward to that. I cannot wait. But even then, ask yourself, have I looked away? Am I sinking currently? And just know that he's waiting there with open arms to pick you right back up. Thank you.